to have a look at pivoting. And it's probably useful to have a look at the data that we're going to use first and see an example of pivoting in Excel. So here we have the table HP admins. So this is a series of dates. So January 95, February 95, March 95, a series of regions, and over here, the sales volume. Now it's quite a lot of rows. So you can see 1,585 rows in total. And it's very difficult to get your head around what the message is actually saying. So you could do various pivots, look at one particular area and go, okay, it's increased here in March, it was really good. It fell back in April, maybe because of Easter. But all of this analysis takes time. So what pivoting does is it allows us to get a report of this data. Now, the word pivot is a central point upon which something turns. And so what we'll be having is the date going down, the region name going across, and then in the middle, we're going to have the sum of the sales volume. So let's do this in Excel to start with. It's very useful in Excel, far less useful in Power BI, and I'll get to the reasons for that later on in this video. So I'll go to Insert Pivot Table, and I'm going to have date going down, I'm going to have region name going across, and sum of the sales volume as the values. So we have rows, we have columns, and we have values. So here we can see very quickly, Greater Manchester, the sales really started to take off 2004. There's a bit of a hitch in 2005, might be worth investigating why that was. 2006, 2007, similar sales volume to what we've had for 5 out of the previous 6 years, and then suddenly collapsed with the financial crisis in 2008. Now in Excel, we can then go deeper and deeper, but this is not an Excel pivot table course. If this is new to you and you do want to find more about pivot tables, they're very quick, very easy to use, very powerful, and I can recommend you searching for a particular course on that. So this is how you do it in Excel. And as I said, there are 3 major components: rows, columns, and what you're actually aggregating, your measure. In this case, what I'm summing. So now let's have a look at it in Power Query. And I'll go into the reason why you probably don't need to do this often. However, this is quite useful information to know, because then we'll be able to talk about unpivoting, which is much more useful. So I'm going to load the same data that we were looking at. So this was the table HP admins. Here it is. So I will load that. So computer has promoted headers and changed types. Fine. And now let's click on Pivot Column. So what I'm going to click on first is what I want in the columns. Now you will see soon I'm actually missing a step, but it's important to see what happens if you do miss a step. So I've highlighted region name, which is what I want in the columns. So if you remember, we have all of the region names going across. So click on Pivot Column, and it says, what is it that you want to aggregate? What's your value? Well, in our Excel example, our values was a sum of the sales volume. So I will change that to sales volume. And you'll notice there are advanced options. They're not really advanced, to be honest. It just says, what do you want to do with sales volume? Do you want to sum, average, median, so that's the middle value, min, max, or count? Quite frankly, that is not that advanced. So I'm going to click OK. And what I want is what I see here. But I'm not going to get that, because it's going to treat all of the other columns as being what I want going down. And of course, there are a lot of other columns. So before pivoting, what we need to do is remove any columns that we don't want. So I'm going to highlight the columns that I do want. Can you remember, and I'm using Control to highlight them, how to remove the other columns? We go to Home, Remove Columns, Remove Other Columns, and you can see the formula table.select columns. So now I'll go back into region name, and I will pivot this column against the sales volume, sum of the sales volume. Click OK, and now you can see what I was anticipating to get. We have the date going down, we have the regions going across. We don't have a total like we did in the Excel version, but that's okay, we don't have totals at the bottom either. Now I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to leave it alone as it was to begin with. So we've got these two. We've got this version, which is the pivoted version, So what we've got is date running across, regions running across, and sales volume in the middle, and the unpivoted version. So what we've got is every column describes a different thing, whether it is a date, whether it is text, in other words, the where, the when, the what, how much, all that sort of thing. So now, if I close and apply, we can see that the two new tables queries are being added. What I can do now is add these in, say, to a table. So if I create a table, and I will add date, maybe I don't want to go down to such levels, and then I can add in Greater Manchester, Merseyside, and so on. So that gets me the representation of the pivot table that we had earlier. But the question is, how useful is this? At this stage, now we are doing the visualization. After all, if we have the unpivoted version, instead of using a table, I can use a matrix. So if I add a matrix in there, and I have the date in the rows, I have the area, the region name in the columns, and the sum of the sales volume in the middle, then we will get to the same answer. If I just show it by year, there you can see it's identical. And I've got totals. So how useful is this really? Well, I suppose if you said, well, I don't actually want in this particular example to concentrate on all of these particular areas. I just want to concentrate on Greater Manchester and South Yorkshire. So you can see it might be able to make that a bit more quickly. But hang on, in this matrix, I can just apply a filter and say region name is, and I want the region name to be Greater Manchester and South Yorkshire. There we go, job done. So pivoting is not as useful in Power BI as it is in Excel because there are very powerful methods of being able to get to the same result without having to go through pivot tables. Indeed, what the matrix does is itself a pivot table. It's got things going down and things going right. So this is less useful than in Excel. It's important to know, however, that you can do it because in the next video, it's important to know the concepts and so forth. In the next video, we'll be looking at the reverse. And this is much more common in Power BI. We have got some data in a standard format, one column each describing as something unique, each being quite straightforward, and we've just pivoted it. But what happens if the source data that we've got is already pivoted? It is in this pivot format, and we actually want it to go back to something like this. And that is going to be the subject.